My name's Candida and I'm the leader of Children's Liturgy at St Mary's Cathedral in Sheffield. And welcome to our Children's Liturgy online for the third Sunday of Easter. Now, if you're used to coming to St Mary's for Children's Liturgy, I want to say a very special hello to you. And I just want you to know that you're very much in my thoughts, and I hope that you and your families are keeping well. Now, obviously, we're not allowed to meet at church. We're not allowed to go to church at the moment, and it's not possible for us to have Children's Liturgy at the moment either. And for that reason, we've decided to try and put Children's Liturgy online so that you can do it from home. And we hope that you'll join us to do that. We'll try and do something for every week. We're very much going to follow the Children's Liturgy that we do when we're together at St Mary's. And the first thing we do, I wonder if you can remember because it's been a few weeks, first thing we do is the welcome song. So I hope that you will join in with us. Clap your hands, everyone together. Stamp your feet, stamp, stamp, stamp. Turn around, reach up high and then down low. It's good to see you, hello. It's good to see you, hello. So we're going to do it again, and we're friends of Jesus this time. Are you ready? Clap your hands, everyone together. Stamp your feet, stamp, stamp, stamp. Turn around, reach up high and then down low. We're friends of Jesus, hello. We're friends of Jesus, hello. So you need your right hand, and we'll make the sign of the cross.
From my head to my heart, from my shoulder to my shoulder, I belong to you, God our Father, Son and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Going to do it the grown-up way as well. In the name of the Father,
and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
If I have hurt anyone by what I have said and done, Jesus, I am sorry. If I have ignored someone or made them feel unloved, Jesus, I am sorry. If I have been unforgiving and full of anger, Jesus, I am sorry. Today's Gospel takes place after Jesus had died and after he had risen, but very soon after he had risen. And so people didn't really know what had happened to him. All they knew was that they were reeling, absolutely reeling and heartbroken from the terrible things that had happened to Jesus. It was all they could talk about, but they were also very, very scared. If that could happen to Jesus, perhaps it could happen to them too. In today's Gospel reading, we hear about two of the disciples. Now, they were on a journey from Jerusalem to somewhere else. And on that journey, they met a stranger. When we get to the Gospel reading, I want you to listen very carefully and see if you can answer 2 questions for me. Question number 1. Where were these 2 people going, these 2 disciples? Where were they off to? Question number 2. Who was the stranger?
You light up our hearts with your love, so we can see the way to follow you and all you do. You light up our hearts with your love.
So we'll do it again.
You light up our hearts with your love, so we can see the way to follow you and all you do. You light up our hearts with your love.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. So you need your right thumb, and we say,
God be in my head, God be on my lips, and God be in my heart.
That very same day, 2 of them were on their way to a village called Emmaus, 7 miles from Jerusalem, and they were talking together about all that had happened. Now, as they talked this over, Jesus himself came up and walked by their side, but something prevented them from recognizing him. He said to them, "What matters are you discussing as you walk along?" They stopped short, their faces downcast. Then one of them, called Cleopas, answered him, "You must be the only person staying in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have been happening there these last few days." "What things?" he asked. "All about Jesus of Nazareth," they answered, "who proved he was a great prophet by the things he said and did in the sight of God and of all the whole people, and how our chief priests and our leaders handed him over to be sentenced to death and had him crucified. Our own hope had been that he would be the one to set Israel free. And this is not all. 2 whole days have gone by since it all happened, and some women from our group have astounded us. They went to the tomb in the early morning, and when they did not find the body, they came back to tell us they'd seen a vision of angels who declared he was alive. Some of our friends went to the tomb and found everything exactly as the women had reported, but of him they saw nothing." Then he said to them, "You foolish men, so slow to believe the full message of the prophets. Was it not ordained that the Christ should suffer and so enter into his glory?" Then, starting with Moses and going through all the prophets, he explained to them the passages throughout the scriptures that were about himself. When they drew near to the village to where they were going, he made as if to go on, but they pressed him to stay with them. "It is nearly evening," they said, "and the day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. Now, while he was at table with them, he took the bread and said the blessing. Then he broke it and handed it to them. And their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, but he had vanished from their sight. Then they said to each other, "Did not our hearts burn within us as he talked to us on the road and explained the scriptures to us?" They set out that instant and returned to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 assembled together with their companions, who said to them, "Yes, it is true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon." then they told their story of what had happened on the road and how they had recognised him at the breaking of bread.
The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Now that we've listened to the Gospel, I want to see if you can answer those questions for me. Can you remember what they were? The first question was, where were those two disciples going to? Can you remember? They were on the road to Emmaus. Now, we have a school in Sheffield called Emmaus, and if you go to Emmaus, hello. The second question I posed was, who was the stranger? Did you pick up on it? Were you doing good listening? Did you hear who the stranger was? You're going to say it aloud. It was Jesus. Now, the interesting thing was that the disciples didn't know who the stranger was. When they bumped into the stranger, they were talking between themselves about all the events that had been happening in Jerusalem to Jesus, and the fact that Jesus had disappeared and nobody seemed to know what had happened to him. And this stranger came alongside him, if you remember. And they didn't recognise the stranger, but he joined in. The stranger joined in with the conversation. And they were amazed by all the things he helps them to understand. He was talking about all sorts of things in Scripture, in the Bible, and he was explaining why all the things that happened to Jesus had to happen. And they'd enjoyed this stranger's company so much that when they got to Emmaus, they invited him in for a meal. And the stranger came in. And it was something that the stranger did that suddenly made them realise who it was. And can you remember what that was? What did he do? He broke some bread. He broke some bread. And at the point where he broke bread and blessed it, they went, "Oh, it's Jesus." But why didn't they recognise Jesus straight away? It's a very good question. So when we try and work out the answer to that question, it's important that we remind ourselves what was actually said in the Gospel, because it said there was something prevented them from recognising him. So why could they not tell it was Jesus? I can only imagine that because Jesus at that moment in time didn't want them to recognise him. But he used that opportunity to talk to them and explain things to them and help them understand what on earth had happened and why the events of Good Friday had to happen, why Jesus had to die on the cross, but also what had happened on the Sunday, that Jesus had risen from the dead. The moment that they did recognise Jesus when he broke the bread, he just vanished straight in front of their eyes. 1 minute he was there, the next minute he was gone. Well, we often talk about in children's liturgy how our God is the God of the impossible. And if you're the God of the impossible, then surely your Son can just be there 1 minute and not be there the next. And he can also talk to people and then not recognise him, and then suddenly have them recognise him. So next time you're watching the Mass live stream, listen out very carefully during the liturgy of the Eucharist and watch for the priest to say, "This is my body, which I have given up for you." And when the priest holds the Eucharist above his head, you can say, "Aha, Jesus, I recognise you." And if you've got a little bell at home, like this one here, at that point, you can ring it like this. So, to finish off our first ever children's liturgy online, I would like to suggest to you and your families that you might like to sing a song. And one of our favourites during the Easter season is Sing It in the Valleys, Shout It from the Mountain Tops. And I include a link just underneath this video of where you can find that on the internet. Happy singing, stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you soon.